coming to you live for the Bill Ford Tough Studio. Boomer Esiason, Greg Giannotti, it's Boomer and Gio on the Fan. Simulcast across the country on CBS Sports Network. And wherever you're on the free Odyssey app, good Tuesday morning. We always lament how there's nothing that happens breaking during the show, very rarely, and always happens at like 10:03, 10:05. Now, this isn't solid news, but it's definitely news, and we are trending towards a potential hire for the New York Jets today, as Ian Rappaport just about an hour ago posted on X. A monumental day, he said. A monumental day. Top target Aaron Glenn visits the Jets, and the goal is to keep him from leaving the building. The deal isn't done, and there's still some particulars to discuss, but if all goes well, he could end today as the head coach of the New York Jets. If not, the Saints await. The way that he put that makes me sound like this is just a formality, and Aaron Glenn is going to be the head coach of the New York Jets. If you've been listening to the show, you know how we feel about that. Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
Good morning, Jay. I thought you were going to talk about that. There is a shoreline in North Korea that's where we could build condos and hotels. That's what I thought you were going to talk about.
I'm saving that for 8:45.
All right, good. Okay, yeah. So, looks like Aaron Glenn's going to be the coach of the Jets, and barring any last-minute snafus or anything else that may go on, maybe New Orleans makes a phone call. I don't know. They've been interviewing other people just in case Aaron Glenn wanted to come to the New York Jets. And here's the thing. You and I, both were talking about the Jets hiring a former head coach, somebody that had the alpha male attitude and somebody that would come in and basically grab the organization by the throat and straighten it out. I don't know if Aaron Glenn has that. A former teammate, I'm happy for him. I've said probably 1,000 times during this hiring cycle that I had hoped that he got a job, that he deserved the job. His success in Detroit spoke for itself, but I didn't want him to have it here, not because I don't think he's a worthy candidate. It's just that I think that this job is a beast of a job. And maybe Woody feels that Aaron Glenn would connect better with his young star players on his roster, and that is really of paramount importance for the Jets and Woody Johnson in particular, because remember, Woody is making this decision. This is his decision 100%. You could have all the different recommendations from everybody, but as I was reading this morning a little bit about Aaron and the influence that other people may have in regards to who Aaron is as a coach, would be the Parcells tree. So, he played for Parcells as a Jet. He played for Parcells as a Cowboy. He's known Bill. Bill has probably given his blessing in regards to Aaron and his future as a head coach. And so as Mike Tannenbaum would obviously have connections to Aaron Glenn through Bill Parcells and would know him. And by the way, when they all got here, Aaron Glenn was on the Jet team, so they all know who Aaron is. And that's one of the reasons why I think that they're pretty hot on the trail for him. But again, the thing that worries me, and I think it worries you, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, is just the inexperience as a head coach and everything that goes into it for this particular franchise at this particular time.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we've been saying. I agree. I think Aaron Glenn could be a really good coach somewhere else. I needed to see someone who's done it before, who's gone through it, who has dealt with an owner before, who has dealt with a fan base, who has stood up there every single day, answered the questions, the pressure, all of those things. I needed someone who went through that. So, if we weren't going to talk to Mike McCarthy, Pete Carroll, or John Gruden, the guys that were on the list that filled that were Matt Nagy and Brian Flores, and I would have preferred either one of those guys other than Aaron Glenn. And it's tough to talk about this because I've admired Aaron Glenn for a long time. I mean, this guy was one of the best defensive backs in Jets history. And he did a great job there in Detroit. I remember watching the Hard Knocks in Detroit, and he was a character, and he was great, and you could tell he was on the way to being a head coach somewhere. But you can't come out of this mess with someone who's going to be learning on the job. And so it's to me, it's not as much about Aaron Glenn, the man. It's about Aaron Glenn's experience and lack thereof when it comes to being a head coach. So
that's really the only knock against him right now. I mean, at the end of the day, he's one of these assistant coaches, former players who has ascended through the ranks, and this is exactly what the NFL wants. I mean, this is the prime example of giving a guy a job who's gone through the ranks, who's been through it as a player, and, has obviously had success as the defense coordinator when his team was totally healthy out there in Detroit. The other thing, too, you and I were talking this morning before we got on air here, and you wonder where, like in the pecking order of the Detroit Lions and their success over the last 3 years, where did Aaron Glenn fall in that pecking order?
Yeah, so if you look at the Detroit Lions, why they have a ton of success, to me, before you get to Aaron Glenn, and tell me if this is fair or not, you got Dan Campbell, who sets the tone. That team plays in the image of Dan Campbell. It's Detroit. He's a tough-nosed guy. He's there. He's for his players. We see the veins popping out of his neck. He was perfect for them at that time. Okay, that's there. This team did not become the team that they are. And when winning all the games, going to the NFC Championship game, getting the 1 seed this year until Ben Johnson became the offensive coordinator. All right, so there's two guys there. You look at their drafts. They have drafted as well as anybody. I mean, maybe you'd say the Philadelphia Eagles have drafted a little bit better, but the Detroit Lions are right there in the last couple of years. So if you've got the perfect head coach, the offensive coordinator that everybody wanted who ends up going to the Bears yesterday, and one of the better front offices, then, where is Aaron Glenn in all of that? And then, by the way, using the injuries as an excuse to me just doesn't fly. Like, that's what a coach really shows that he's a great coach, is when you don't have all the great players and you still somehow find a way. So if he were the Saints head coach, I would like it a lot better. It's just, like I said before, it's tough because I don't want to knock this guy. I just cannot now celebrate after months of me saying, after Rob Saleh got hired, that the next guy's got to have experience. He's got to walk in there. He's got to know what he's doing. He's got to take this job by the balls. Then they hire a guy who's never been a head coach. I can't sit here and say that I like it.
Yeah, well, the Jets are going down that road again. The last time they actually hired, I believe, a head coach that had head coaching chops was Bill Parcells.
Yeah.
I mean, this is falls in line with every other coach.
Oh, Adam Gase, actually.
Adam Gase, too, but how long will he last?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. So it is a huge job. I hope Aaron's ready for it, if in fact he does sign here and he understands what he's walking into. I think you always think of yourself as being the guy that's going to be the difference maker, especially when you are becoming the leader of a particular franchise in the NFL, and that you can be that alpha personality that is going to coach the entire roster, which he went to great lengths to make sure everybody understood that he's not just a defensive coordinator, that he will be a coach of the entire team. Now, interestingly enough, Ben Johnson got hired by the Bears. The first thing you saw and you heard about Ben Johnson was that he was putting together an all-star staff.
Yeah, Dennis Allen, the defensive coordinator.
Right, like he's already got his staff together, like he's ready to rock and roll. He knows what's going on. And by the way, he could have picked any team he wanted, and he wanted Caleb Williams. And the interesting thing about that is that it's in the NFC North with the Lions. So I think the Bears, what they did here is they made the Lions weaker by stealing their offensive coordinator and made their own team stronger by making him their head coach.
Yeah.
So that's a double win as far as I'm concerned with the Bears. And I think there should be genuine excitement about Ben Johnson going there because of the effect that it's going to have on the Lions. And it looks like the Lions are losing like 3 or 4 different coaches, maybe even more than that, depending on if these coordinators bring some of the coaches that were coaching under them with them to their respective new teams.
Also losing guys in the front office because there is a good chance that you might have Chris Spielman, who was a Lions executive, who was the brother of Rick Spielman, who was a part of the 33rd team that went out and was running this search, which is just hilarious.
I'll tell you, it's nepotism all over the NFL. You know that at every level, whether it be nepotism or just family members or whatever the hell you want to call it, however you want to describe it.
And the other one is Commander's assistant GM, Lance Newmark, who knows Aaron Glenn and has worked within the Lions organization as well. So, basically they went out and they got the head coach and then are pairing the GM with that head coach, which normally is not the way that I like it. I mean, if you're someone like Bill Belichick, then that could work that way. Someone in the front office, even though Bill would probably be the GM. Or if Pete Carroll came in, you say, all right, Pete, who do you want to work with? But when it's a first-time head coach, hiring the coach and then finding the GM that works with him, to me, is ass backwards.
Man, I just hope through this interview process, because they interviewed half the NFL.
Yeah.
I just hope they asked the right questions. I hope they asked about, the way that Aaron sees his coaching staff, the way he sees game day, the way he sees how they're going to practice, the way they're going to meet. I mean, all of those things that the head coach, and look, he's been exposed to a number of really top quality coaches, including Dan Campbell. And Dan Campbell had to start off slow until they really started to hit it, and they started to hit it a little bit in free agency, a little bit in the draft. They made the trade for Jared Goff when they decided Matt Stafford could go out to L.A., and they got some extra picks back for that.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of good things that they did in Detroit and a lot of good decisions that Brad Holmes, their general manager, made in order to build that roster to get it where it is today. And it's unfortunate for Aaron that he lost so many players to injury this year. And, I think the thing, unfortunately, that happened this past weekend was the 4th and 2 where they had 12 men on the field.
Yeah.
And it looked like it was a little bit helter-skelter on the sideline. That's the last thing I want to see for the Jets, when they take the field, because it's a different beast. It's a different animal. And I'd also want to know, with Aaron, do you have somebody that you're going to bring with you or that you need to help you manage football games? Because every head coach needs to have that. Every head coach needs to have that guy in his ear talking situational football when the game is being played. It's not just standing on the sideline screaming at everybody. It's, getting everybody all on the same page, organized. And then when the real hard decisions come at the end of the first half, at the end of the game, when you use your timeouts, when you don't use your timeouts, who's your quarterback going to be? Can he handle it? I mean, there's a million variables that go into this. And that's why I don't necessarily know that the Jets is the best place, because we've seen it. It's not the best place for a inexperienced head coach.
Yeah. I mean, and this is it's amazing all of the drastic things that Woody Johnson did this year because it didn't work out. Firing Rob Saleh so early in the season, firing Joe Douglas, getting that deal done with Hassan Reddick, all of these things, and it didn't work out. And for him to just now repeat the same pattern and go and find a coordinator who is a first-time head coach and do this all over again. Defensive, by the way. Now, I'm not saying that you can't succeed with a defensive head coach. You've seen others succeed, but a lot of those times, those guys like Sean McDermott have an all-world quarterback that are basically carrying them. But here you go again. So we talked about how
Dan Quinn's a defensive coach,
right? But they drafted Jaden Daniels.
I know
they
that.
got Cliff Kingsbury there.
But I will say that both of the defenses that we're talking about, are as just impactful. Unfortunately, fortunately for them, they have the quarterback that changes the whole dynamic of the team.
Right, but the Jets aren't going to have that guy. So their chances are, unless they fall into a miracle in the draft, they're not going to have that guy. Aaron Rodgers maybe comes back, or they get a scrap heap guy. So now, once again, you're going to have a bad option at quarterback, a first-time defensive head coach, and who's your offensive coordinator going to be? If it's a first-time offensive coordinator, it's essentially the same thing you just did
4 years ago.
It's the same thing. I mean, and I know there's different people, and Rob Saleh is an Aaron Glenn, but it didn't work. And it's just amazing to me that they don't see it the way that most people see it. It's like to get us out of this, I can't be pulling a guy off a team who's never done it before as a head coach.
All I can say is that one of your first-round draft picks, one of the best players in recent memory for the New York Jets coming home, that there's a touch of I think excitement and positivity surrounding that. That I will say.
Well, I mean, that's part of the reason why he's going to get the job. Like, if he didn't play for the Jets, just based on his resume and where the Jets are, I don't think that he's really even an option for them. There's a lot of the fact that he was here. Yeah. He was a great player, but I mean, that doesn't do anything for you when you're the head coach. And like, it was a long time ago that he was here. There's been a lot of crap that has gone on since.
And he had a lot of success here. I mean, initially, he was drafted in '94 by Pete Carroll, played for Richie Kotite for 2 years, and then unfortunately was able to play for Parcells.
Yeah, right. Which really was put him on the trajectory to be a head coach. But yeah, to me, it's disappointing. I mean, I know that we could very easily be wrong about this, and I hope that I am wrong about this. But it feels to me like this is a just really, really bad idea. And to have these other guys they're not GMs either. They've never been a GM before. Chris Spielman, was he actually a GM or was he an assistant somewhere?
I feel like maybe the Dolphins, was he, or was that his brother?
Well, I know Rick has had lots of jobs.
Just Google it.
He is
Vikings.
Googling it right now. So just relax.
Yeah. It's just so funny. You know, my brother would be perfect for this job. No, he was never
perfect.
Yeah, special assistant to the owner and CEO. And
maybe it is maybe anybody with any experience didn't want this job. You ever think about that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's one of the things that but then again, I mean, you didn't talk to some of the guys that had experience. And by the way, you telling me Brian Flores wouldn't want this job? Brian Flores would take this job.
Of course he would, yes.
That's a guy with experience. You didn't talk to Mike McCarthy. You didn't talk to Pete Carroll. You didn't talk to John Gruden. Did you talk to Matt Nagy?
Yes.
Okay, you talked to Matt Nagy, but, I guess they...
And by the way, a lot of these interviews that they had done, were all Zoom interviews. They were all electronic stuff. Just to kind of get to know a guy, and then you bring him in and you talk to him personally like they did with Flores, and now they're going to do with Aaron Glenn today.
Yeah, so Lance Newmark, the other guy, first season assistant general manager of the Commanders, 28 years of experience, 26 seasons with the Detroit Lions. So I guess 20,
how did those Lions do?
Yeah, right. I know, 23 really bad seasons with the Detroit Lions and 3 okay ones.
Somehow that guy kept his head down.
Wow. My goodness. Newmark previously oversaw the day-to-day operations of the Lions football information and football technology departments. Okay. California native. Played wide receiver for 2 years at San Diego Mesa College before transferring to San Diego. So perfect. We got another guy get as far away as humanly possible from Florham Park and New York City and all that stuff, and then suck him out of there and spit him out here and see how it goes. I mean, I know he was in Detroit for a while.
Yes.
So he knows losing, but... It's just
let's just hope that if it does happen, that at least we can give a couple months of a honeymoon. Can we at least do that?
I can't. I'm sorry, I can't. I can't, because to me that would be completely hypocritical and going against everything I've said. I can't. For a month, the second that Rob Saleh was fired, I said, you got to have a guy with experience. You got to have someone come in here who's going to be the man. Buck stops here. You can't be a first-time head coach who's a coordinator. Can't do that. Can't do it again. Can't do it again. Then they're going to do it, and I'm going to give them a honeymoon period? No. I think they screwed up. It's not about Aaron Glenn. It's not about him as a man. And if he were hired as a Saints head coach, I'd be like, all right, perfect. Good. Knows that organization.
Jacksonville.
I would say good. It's just this particular job with the Jets.
It's a beast.
At this time in their history, can't happen. All right, Boomer and Gio on the Fan and CBS Sports Network.
Maybe it will, there's always a chance that it could surprise all of us.
Right. I'm not saying that it's a lock that it's going to be a failure. As I sit here right now, I just don't think it's going to happen. I just don't think it's going to be a success, unfortunately. And by the way, how could you you'd have to have blind faith to believe that this is going to work out. You just have to.
Maybe there's something about the way that he connected with Woody on their initial interview, and when they get him in person, they're going to feel even stronger about that. Woody's selecting the right guy, because at the end of the day, as I heard Mike Tannenbaum say numerous times, there's 32 owners. They're the ones that make all the decisions, supposedly.
Yeah. Well, if you trust Woody Johnson, then I guess you like this hire. Boomer and Gio on the Fan and CBS Sports Network.
He was front and center yesterday.
Yes.
In the inauguration.
He indeed. All right, we have a quick break. We'll get